live from New York. Now, that match, of course, to commemorate the 1947 All-Ireland final at the Polo Grounds. Coverage begins at 8:30. Well, that's something to really look forward to next weekend. And a reminder also that Sideline View on Friday night comes from New York and previews that match. But for tonight, it's congratulations.
In celebration of the famous Polo Grounds final of 1947. The only time the All-Ireland final was ever played outside Ireland, of course. And I'm heading now to what was the venue then. Of course, it's knocked down now. Amos, can you get me a taxi, please?
Yes, sir. Taxi!
Who's going to win the big game?
Kerry.
Kerry. The ground, though, was demolished in the 1960s. The Yankees have moved across the river to a very modern 55,000-seater stadium. So instead of the awe-inspiring high stands of the old Polo Grounds, we now have high-rise flats. And I have to say, it's so disappointing for me, having read so much and heard so much about the famous Polo Grounds finals, to come along and discover that it's now just a housing project in New York. These young children playing here are oblivious to the fact that this very spot once was the home to one of the most exciting, dramatic and historic events in Irish sport.
Led by John Joe O'Reilly and Ginny Lyon leading the pride of the kingdom. And as I look down on this scene of splendor, the crowd and team do honor to the national anthem. For a clearance by Johan paves the way for a Garvey solo and yet another Kerry goal. Kerry followers smiled. Then Stafford finishes the Higgins shot to the net. Cavan are indeed jubilant now, but more is to come. John Kerry O'Donnell escorts the injured Dowling to the line. A brilliant bout of hand passing with Duke, Stafford, McDyer and Donoghue produced another point for the North. And so ended the All-Ireland final of 1947 with Cavan the champion.
Well, this is what it was all about 50 years ago. That's one of the medals, the winning medals. The lucky owner, his own Ro McGovern, a member of the Cavan team.
Never forget it. They gave us a ticket tape reception on Fifth Avenue. Well, we were in cars. The two captains were in the front in an open car, and we were all coming behind in car. We're all in cars. We went to City Hall. There was a band there who went to City Hall. A lot of speech and all that.
But were there thousands out on the street?
Oh, they were looking out the windows, and oh, sure, there was a good crowd of people. They didn't know what was going on, the whole thing, you know. It was unbelievable, yeah.
And do you get emotional now even thinking about it?
Oh, yes, I do, yes. Yeah.
I can sense that. And the match itself in 47, was it a tough game?
Oh, it was a great game and very clean game. And the last 15 minutes was unbelievable. Now, when Kerry came back and tried to win it, they hit the upright, they hit the crossbar, and we won it by 4 points. We came back on the Queen Mary. It was wonderful. I'm telling you, the food was out of this world, and I was dancing and having a swimming pool, and it was just really living, I'll tell you.
There was none of those in Swanland Bar?
There was none around Swanland Bar like that, no.
No, nice talking to you. And of course, a fascinating thing about it was that whereas the players now come over very quickly, back then, it took a hell of a long time on the flight to get to New York from Dublin.
It was 29 hours, and we had a long time in Shannon before the Malmeen Pagoda. That was the name of the constellation that, not altogether an Irish name, that TWA had put at our disposal, if you like. And there was a long delay down there because there were headwinds, and it was proposed that 4 or 5 of the party would have to be left behind. And if they were left behind, we could fly straight on to Gander. But nobody was going to stand for anybody being left behind. We were all going. So we went via the Azores, Gander, Boston, and down to New York. It took us 29 hours. It was one heck of a journey, I'll tell you that.
Well, of course, that was 50 years ago, but when you think of a 29 hours flight to get here, it must have been dreadful for the players. Anyway, it's all changed a lot now. Yesterday, the players arrived here in just 6 hours. Michael Lester went along to JFK Airport to meet the players as they arrived and to find out if the Breffni men are ready to stop the green and gold rush.
50 years after Aer Lingus took the original teams to their Polo Grounds date, Cavan and Kerry are back in town, this time travelling separately. While the Kerry party make their way from Shannon, Flight EI 105 arrives first from Dublin with the Cavan team, past and present, all led through by Stephen King and the Anglo-Celt Cob.
It's great to be back after 50 years. I didn't think that it ever happened, but it did. It's great really to be here.
Mick, obviously things will have changed an awful lot in those 50 years. Tell me a little bit about it back in 1947, arriving here.
When we arrived here, we arrived from a country that was post-war, Ireland. We had no televisions. The petrol was rationed. It was just coming back. And when we arrived here, it was a sight. Every licensed premises, every pub had a television in every hotel. And it's not the only cars. And it was it looked a country of wealth compared to Ireland.
Well, Peter, obviously it hasn't gotten any smaller in the meantime.
No. I haven't been back since, believe it or not, although I've done plenty of travelling and all, but I never got back to New York. And it is nice to get back, but unfortunately most of the people that we knew 50 years ago are not around anymore.
It's a great occasion again after 50 years that we're coming back to New York to play a National League game, and it's unique as well that Cavan have, you know, are Ulster champions, and we play them in the All-Ireland semi-final, so it should make a great weekend.
Yeah, it's a special occasion, I suppose, 50 years on, and see just a number of the players from that period actually just coming out there, and some of them are looking fairly fresh and fit, maybe fitter than some of our riders at the moment, but yeah, it's a special occasion. We're looking forward to the game now on Saturday.
Well, for the New York GAA, it is a very important moment, the fact that since we have the repeated 1947 All-Ireland final played in our area, and we're expecting anywhere up to 15,000 people, which is a big attendance for us. And naturally, it's a pleasure to have our own people out here competing in a National League match.
Joe, by the same token, what does this mean for the GAA at home?
Well, it's very much a bridging of a gap and a bridge, as it were, with the 1947 All-Ireland being held here on the Polo Grounds, and commemorating the vision of the many people way back who initiated that particular exciting project, the most momentous decision ever taken by the association in many ways at that time, celebrating that, and obviously, hopefully, the reenactment will assist in the development of the games here and illustrates, I think, our commitment towards ensuring that Gaelic games will be played here in New York and indeed throughout North America.
Well, Sam Maguire made it through to New York, but Liam Hassett, you were having a small problem for a while.
Yeah, I left my passport in Dublin. I travelled down from Dublin last night, and I woke up this morning and it was only my sister that reminded me that I have my passport. So I rang Mike straight away, and I asked Mike would he get it down by courier, and but he rang the courier, and the courier said it wouldn't have it down until 2:30, so obviously that was too late. So, you know, I thought it was all right. We got it sorted out in Shannon. I was let through the immigration in Shannon, but when I came here, I think it was a bit of a different story. You know, they were a bit more strict, and you know, it was like being treated like a criminal or something. You know.
I'm sure when you got as far as the gate here at arrivals, you thought you'd made it, but it wasn't quite like that.
Yeah, I had the Sam Maguire and all, but of course the Sam Maguire doesn't mean much to some people over here, so I was edging my way out, and your man called me back. He said, "You're going nowhere," so I had to go back into immigration again. But thankfully we got it started out, and our linguists were very good to us as well.
Sean Kelly, the irony is, in getting this thing sorted out, it was a Cavan man that sorted it.
Yes, Philip Sheridan of the organising committee was very helpful to us, and the Ireland staff, as Liam says, were also very helpful, so we're very pleased to have got over this little impasse, and we're looking forward to a very good few days here in New York. The survivors of the 47 final will be introduced to the crowd before the game here tomorrow, as they were at Croke Park a month ago. But the story of how the final came to be played here is fascinating. New York, led by Cavan Hamilton, had requested the final. The request seemed certain to fail until a remarkable twist, a story best described by former GAA Orth Durahor, Sean O'Sheacon.
To give an opportunity to the proposer of the motion, the great Cavan Hamilton, Congress was adjourned from the morning session to Croke Park after the Railway Cup hurling final in which Connacht beat Munster.
And that was postponed because of bad weather and Patrick.
Yeah, I couldn't be sure of that one, but Cavan Hamilton proposed the motion, and during that hurling game, prior to the reassembly, I can clearly recall Seamus Gardner, the immediate past president, going around amongst the delegates, appealing to some of them at least to support Canon Hamilton's motion so that he wouldn't feel too let down. Now we come to the actual event, the reassembly. Canon Hamilton proposed the motion as nobody else could, and he was supported, seconded by a teacher from West Clare, I can't recall his name. And in supporting Canon Hamilton's motion, he made a very dramatic appeal, including reading from a letter which he had got from a friend in New York, and what it would mean to him and to hundreds of his generation who would never again have a chance of seeing an All-Ireland final, appealing that this would be done. And the rogue, after the thing was passed, he admitted to all and sundry he had written the letter himself the night before in Barry's Hotel.
Wasn't Canon Hamilton a cute man all the same to get his own way in the end? But you know, when he spoke about the importance of the games for the emigrants, he was talking about the thousands of people who came here Sunday after Sunday, because to the Irish in New York, Gaelic Park was the centre place for Gaelic games. To them, I suppose, it was Croke Park.
Gaelic Park means everything to people like myself, that when I came here, and of course people that followed in my footsteps, so to speak, Gaelic Park was a place where people found work. Countless thousands of people found work here in Gaelic Park. So people would come here, they would meet their neighbours from home, wherever they come from, whatever village or county they're from, they would meet them here. And it was a terrific place for people to meet and make friends. When I walked into Gaelic Park first, like everybody else, you would be disappointed with the surroundings. But after you're here a while and you realise this is the only place where Gaelic games are played in New York, you're very, very happy to be here. And I remember my first visit, that's the way it was with me. And a couple of weeks after coming here, I got my job here in Gaelic Park, and as a matter of fact, met my wife here, and I played for many years, of course, and in them days we had more people coming to Gaelic Park because people were travelling on the subway. Today everybody has a car, they go to other things and they go outside the city. But of course we still have a very good attendance here, but it's different. It is different today than it was back in them days.
Well, of course, the reason the game tomorrow is not being played here is quite simply that although the bleachers here can accommodate 2,700 fans, it simply isn't big enough for the crowd anticipated at tomorrow's game. So instead, it's been moved about 20 minutes up the road. Yes, the Irish tricolour being raised here at the stadium, and what is a huge weekend for the Irish people in New York. Months of effort and preparation have gone into it so that the game can be played here at this 20,000-seater stadium in Triborough. Of course, despite all the effort that's gone into it, there have been one or two problems. And this is just one of the problems. Heavy rain has fallen here in advance of the game. Pete Flynn, as the groundsman here, how big a problem is this for you?
Well, we got to pump it out and make sure that I don't get underneath the sod, because the sod is on top of this running track in about 20 feet, and there's only about an inch of topsoil and then the sod on top of it. This field was a mess. I mean, it was nothing but dust, and the running track around it was higher than the pitch and the centre, so we had to put topsoil and try and level it out halfway decent for them to play on. The sods come in a 50-foot roll, and there's two of them together. They're 2 feet wide, so that's 4 feet by 50, 200 square feet in a roll, and it's hooked up to the tractor. And you pick it up with a hydraulic, and then you come over and you drop it down and roll it right out, and then a few guys with rakes that catch it on the pulley together, and then you roll it and water it, and it'll stay there.
Now, dotted around the pitch, Pete, there's about 6 or 7 blue flags. What is the purpose of those?
There's drains there that came off the running track onto the field, and we have for each one, we left them open the way that for the rain, that the water would go down in the drain. And today, sometime, we're going to pick that up and level it off with topsoil and put the sod back down, the way there'll be no trip hazard for the game.
Well, as you see, Downing Stadium also has an athletics track, and it's a particularly historic athletics track because when the stadium opened here in 1936, the first event was the trials for the American Olympic track and field team, and it produced the qualification of Jesse Owens for the Berlin Olympics, where Owens was to make such a startling impact and win so many medals. Subsequently, Carl Lewis also qualified for the Olympics through the American trials at this stadium. But if you notice down at the back, there's no seating. That's because the arena is also used as a baseball stadium and in the middle area we have soccer played normally, but of course the pitch was not big enough for the GA specifications, so the athletics track has been covered by these sods specifically for the GA match. Afterwards the grass will be taken off the athletics track, but it will remain in the middle as an improved soccer pitch. This obviously has cost a lot of money, as Connie O'Reilly of the organising committee has been telling me.
It's costing us about $500,000, and $100,000 is spent here in the stadium, a new pitch we put down, repairs to the seating and stuff like that. Banquets being held at various nights, airline tickets, hotel rooms, and so on. That's what the expense is, really.
It's a massive amount of money. How are you going to get it back?
Well, on the day, like, we expect to have about 15,000 people turn up. Tickets are selling briskly. At the moment, we have about 12,000 sold. We also have the bars will be functioning that day, and we have about 125,000 in sponsorship that we're very pleased with.
Was it easy to get that kind of money?
No, we had to twist a few arms here and there. It's never easy to get money, but we're very pleased. We've got great support from companies here in New York and in Ireland, and our committee worked very hard on this, and everybody. It's not me alone, but the people who helped raise this money. It's been tremendous.
Cavan Kerry, can I help you? Hello, yes. And you're looking for how many? 50 tickets? Okay, Jimmy, can you hold on 1 second and I'll just take your credit card number, please.
The interest over the past 2 weeks has been huge. When tickets went on sale originally, they were slow, but especially Kerry winning the All-Ireland has increased the ticket sales, and the interest now with the 2 cups coming, the Sam Maguire Cup, the League Cup with Kerry, and of course the Anglo-Celt Cup coming with Ulster champions Cavan, has really made this game beyond our belief.
Is there much interest in this match outside the Irish community?
Yes, there is quite an interest in it, and we have had calls from people who would not be connected with the Irish community purchasing tickets for this game.
And dignitary-wise, who do you expect to come?
Well, the Mayor Giuliani is coming, Cardinal O'Connor, and we're expecting Prime Minister Taoiseach, Mr. Bertie Ahern.
Ticket sales are going very, very well in the last week or so. In fact, we've had to add some more telephone lines to accommodate and get more staff in the office to be able to accommodate the sales. And that's all in the last week or 10 days. It's probably the biggest event in Gaelic football that has happened in 50 years, and it was a very big undertaking going back approximately a year and a half it got started.
Most of the committee is made up of Cavan or Kerry, and practically actually there's more of the Cavan side because they won it in 47, but we have 97.
We must also remember that this game, of course, is being shown live back home.
Yes, and I do thank RTE for doing that for us. It's an enormous event, and the fact that it's coming on live at 8:30 in the evening in Ireland.
Now, when you're watching the match live tomorrow on Network 2, it's interesting to compare the technology now with when the final came from the Polo Grounds in 1947. Tomorrow the pictures go from here to the roof of the Empire State Building over my shoulder, and from there via satellite to your homes, all within a second or two. And of course, that's also different from 1947, when even getting a telephone call from the United States was such a big thing. Michael O'Hare's radio commentary from the Polo Grounds ran via a cable. It was a land cable that ran right across the floor of the Atlantic from here to Ireland. And for Michael in those days, it wasn't easy.
Well, on the Friday before the match, I went down to the Polo Grounds to have a look to see where I was going to talk from, and I found where I was to talk from. I spoke to the local caretaker, but he knew nothing about lines or microphones. He said that normally they'd be in on the Friday. So I came back into the Woodstock Hotel near Times Square in New York and told Paddy O'Keefe about it, and he started ringing up line companies and everything else, and nobody knew anything about it. Fortunately, an Irishman, Bill O'Dwyer, was mayor of New York, a man from Bahola in County Mayo, and he got working, and pulling mayoral strings, if you like, it did go on the air. And, you know, it was a pretty anxious time wondering if there was going to be a broadcast at all or not.
I was cognizant of the fact all the time that we were running against time in this broadcast, because Paddy O'Keefe had told me, he said, now, Matt, make sure to keep strict time and keep the game moving. During the first half, I was very upset with Chancho Sheehy got rested. He came in when Eddie Dowling was injured. His injury was such that he couldn't resume, and anyone with common sense coming in to see him would know that he couldn't. But John Sheehy had a bucket of water, and I don't know who was with him. And I said to him, John Joe, I said, we're running against time in the broadcast. What he said, the rule is there and we're entitled to something. I know, I said, you are, but I said the people of Ireland are entitled to something too, and the broadcast.
Looked as if we were going to run out of time, because when the lines were booked, they were booked up to 5 o'clock New York time. And with about 5 minutes, 10 minutes left in the game, I looked up on the clock. There was a big clock across the way from me, and it was 5 to 5. And I said, my heavens, if somebody along the line pulls out a plug just because a piece of paper says disconnect the polo grounds at 5 o'clock, the people at home aren't going to hear the end of the match. So I started appealing, if there's anybody along the way who's listening, just leave us here for 5 minutes more. And I started trying to explain to them how important it was. Well, whether they were listening to me or they didn't give a damn whether we stayed on for 10 minutes or not, we stayed on, we got the finish, and we got the aftermath as well. But I tell you this, that of all the words that I've ever spoken on the air, I think that appeal for 5 minutes more is remembered by more people than anything else. And you know, it's amazing the number of people who will tell you, you know, that night we could hear the waves. And that's absolutely true. Dozens of people, there was some kind of an atmospheric on the line, and they could hear the waves of the Atlantic going over the words coming over.
You know, that's pretty amazing. Of all the words used by Michael O'Hare in that long and illustrious career, those ones probably had the greatest impact. Well, that's about it. Remember, the game is live tomorrow on Network 2 at 8:30. Hope you enjoy it. In the meantime, from a wet and rather dreary New York, hopefully it'll be better tomorrow, we'll leave you with a reminder that next week on Sideline View, we'll be offering you your choice of goal of the championship in both hurling and football. From the Big Apple, good night.
Less than a minute remains on the clock as I tighten my lace and turn down my sock. One last chance, and I step up to the ball.
Which was a 74.